Most pilots assume the goal is to fly passengers and that cargo is the thing you settle for. I want to challenge that because cargo is one of the most misunderstood corners of this industry, and for a lot of pilots, it is generally the better career. A little while ago, during a live session with our clients, I ended up in a long conversation about cargo operations with a colleague of mine in the US, Hilary Patterson. These are the calls where we normally run advanced interview practice sessions with our clients. That evening, several of them were preparing for cargo selection, so Hilary and I turned it into something closer to a masterclass. What you're about to watch was completely spontaneous. It is also a chance to get to know Hilary, who now works with us. She's been a recruiter for many years in the US across both passenger and cargo operations. So she looks at this from the same side of the table as I do. We thought it was too good to keep to ourselves, so we are sharing it with you here. I hope that you enjoy watching it as much as I enjoyed recording it with Hilary. Hello, everyone. So I'm here with Hilary Patterson. We met recently and we are discussing because we are both previously recruiters and we help pilots succeed at airline selections. Hilary does it in the US, we do it in Europe and in many other countries. And we sort of had a really good time talking. And today we were helping some of our ASP pilots to evaluate themselves during practice interviews. We call these advanced interview practice sessions. And because some of them were going for cargo airlines, we thought that we would take the opportunity to talk about the difference between cargo and passenger. And Hilary, she's recruited for a cargo airline. I've flown cargo myself as well as passenger. So we thought we'd have this conversation. So Hilary, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing great, Kevin. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. So tell me what are the differences that a candidate should be aware of? Because they all want to go and fly passenger, but in fact, cargo is great. I love cargo. But why? What's different, or what should you like about cargo?
Well, I always say that this is kind of my joke. If you really don't like people, cargo is for you. But what I have seen with the cargo industry over my years recruiting for it and just in the airline industry itself is you can find a lot of stability there. It is not as affected by world events, the ups and downs of things. Sometimes people may not travel, but the cargo has to move and flying may be reduced on the passenger side. And also, what a lot of people don't know is passenger airlines carry cargo. So, in times when there is a slowdown in passenger flying, sometimes there's an increase in cargo and cargo loads. So, a lot more stable. They're probably not going to see the furloughs and the ups and downs as much as, say, a passenger airline pilot. That's one of the big ones, and they do have the opportunity to have some different schedules. Like here in the US, a lot of the domestic cargo flights are daily out and backs. You're not gone. I had one cargo pilot tell me years ago he'd been with his company, and this was a legacy cargo company, said, I've been with them for 9 years and I've never missed one of my son's baseball games.
Oh,
So
that's
there's a
interesting.
quality of life
But
piece.
but that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
rather unusual because what I know from cargo is that you'd have like 9 and 12 days cargo trips. Like I've got a friend who flies for Cargolux and he's gone for very long times. Then after that he's got very long period at home. So what you're saying is that there are also jobs that are very family friendly in cargo.
Yes. Yes, and they have the other variation as well. So they kind of have, if you're international cargo, you would be kind of on that like 2 week on, 2 week off schedule. You go for 2 weeks, you go all over international, come home. But in the US, it's so large, we have a lot of large aircraft domestic cargo that flies, and it's usually a daily out and back. So
Wow.
if you live at your base, you come home every day. So there are some quality of life differences that are sometimes very lucrative for people and maybe just what they're looking for.
Wow. And are these they do out and back scheduled or is it cargo on demand as well?
There's both. Some of the smaller, they call them feeder operators that fly like the turboprop and things like that. They have those. Those are a lot of out and back where, and a lot of it is Monday through Friday flying. So there's some very nice schedules, just even on the feeder level with the turboprop.
But they fly like it's a
So
scheduled flight that always goes at the same
yeah,
time,
it's a
or
scheduled flight. Yep. You
scheduled flight.
say, I'm going from Memphis to Denver every day or whatever. And that's your flight, usually Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday, because they're mail carrier. If they're one of the
Mail
big
carrier,
names, then
of
they
course.
operate on their mail schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
what you were talking about on the stability, it might, when the audience was listening to this, they might wonder why, because cargo is known for being unstable, but we were talking about job security here, and just think about how it was during COVID. And your point is it is really was very visible then, right? Because during COVID, many airlines stopped completely, but the cargo
yes,
airlines, they thrived actually during this time.
100%. And I
Yeah.
was recruiting for the cargo airline at that time. And we said, pause for about a month till we could figure out what was going on. And we actually flew what we call peak cargo loads, which is usually during the holiday season. And we flew peak loads for about a year and a half during the pandemic. We were shipping vaccines, right? There was new, and then everyone was staying home and doing online ordering. So it actually peaked and cargo became pretty busy for that time period. So
So if you're a pilot in a cargo airline, then you had no problems. Whereas if you are
absolutely.
flying for
Yeah.
passenger airline, you had a lot of problems.
Yeah, we
So
actually hired a furloughed passenger pilot to help us. He knew he was going to be furloughed. They gave him a year and a half, and he came and worked in our training department and helped us update some things. So we actually hired some of the furloughed passenger pilots.
good. So in fact, one of the reasons cargo is not that popular is that it's not well known at the end of the day, right? People know passenger airplanes because they are passengers themselves, but they don't really know what's
Yes.
going on in the cargo operation. I love cargo. I love cargo. It's not because I don't like people, but I loved cargo because of the ambience. I just it feels like almost when you're going at the Aero Club and it feels like just going out flying. There's it's quicker to dispatch the airplane. It's a lot quicker to get off the airplane and go and enjoy your layover when you're doing layovers, because of course there are fewer humans to bring on and fewer humans to bring out. And there are also fewer problems because humans come with problems. It's not necessarily their fault. Sometimes it can be, but it's also because, well, they can be traveling and feeling sick, having become sick from the flight before, or they can, yeah, sickness is a big factor. There can be other kinds of issues that they are late at the airport and not coming through. You have to manage all of that at the cargo. With the cargo, all of this human factor is pretty much gone. So it's very relaxing. And when you finish a 14-hour flight and you just feel like you would just like to get off the plane, it goes like literally a lot quicker to get off a 777 that flew transcontinental with like 450 passengers. It takes you a good 30 minutes to get off the plane. It takes 5 on a cargo plane, really. So, and then also you go through the airport with just the 2 of you, or maybe the 4 of you, if it's 4 pilots, and you go through security a lot quicker than if it's 20 of you. And you will also not get into a bus that can be uncomfortable. Usually you get into a car. You see, it's nice in that sense.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's right. You usually have your own part of the airport. You don't have to walk through the terminal. I see some of those pilots and they look so miserable sometimes. Just walking through the
that's
crowds,
true.
right? Everyone running to their flights. Yeah, exactly.
Now, from an operational point of view, and this is if you're going for your interview right now with a cargo airline like Cargolux or others, or ASL in Europe, or any of the big names in the US, the FedExes, the DHLs, whichever size airplane you will fly or destinations you will do, it's a very different logic. So it's not because there are no passengers that it's easy in a sense. It's easier from the point of not having to manage humans, but you have to manage the cargo instead. And cargo comes with its own set of problems of potential threats. Okay, so there are things that you need to be really good at that it's not important during passenger, but it becomes your job. during cargo, which is dangerous goods. Okay, you need to know them. You're going to carry more dangerous goods. There are some things you cannot carry on passenger flights that you can carry on cargo flights. And you're going to carry goods that are larger and that can therefore, if they move, create a lot of problems and potentially life-threatening problems. So when you're on the cargo plane, it's very important for you to know what it is you're carrying, where it is, and if it's been properly strapped. Okay, so a few things you can say is the threat of the cargo flight is this, is you've got in the hold some goods that could be dangerous, potentially very dangerous. You need to know where they are. And you've got then on the main deck items that, well, if the main deck is fully packed, then there's no real problem with the strapping. It's minimal because it just moves against each other. But if you have, for instance, an engine that's in the middle and there's nothing against it, if it starts to move, then it could basically destabilize the plane and it won't be airworthy anymore. And this has happened quite often where inappropriate loading has gotten things to move with airplane losses. Also, if it's been inappropriately weighed, or you've gotten a pallet on board that's not the one that you should have had. So there are many things that you have to check and to pay attention to. It's not just turn up on the plane and let the cabin crew manage the passengers. Now you've got to really look after what you've got behind. Okay, so that's, and I find that quite interesting, really, because human error won't come from the other humans you would get. They would come from you're going to have loaders who all they do is load bags or load cargo all day. They're not necessarily as, and they don't fly with you. So if things are not strapped properly, yes, they'll get into trouble, but you'll pay the consequence. Okay, so you've got to and you go to countries where you'll go to Asia and places where you'll have like 40 people coming onto your aircraft loading something, and then you've got to double check what's going on at some point before you go. Okay, you could be flying livestock like horses with grooms that come with you that don't follow the procedures. For instance, they don't go in the main cargo area with their oxygen bottle, but it's mandatory. So you've got to talk to them and you've got to make sure that they do things the right way. There are all these things. And I'll finish my monologue on this. Then there's also the fact that it's a very interesting operation. Unless you do like very scheduled short haul, on long haul, you could be going like anywhere to places where passengers don't want to go because it's not hospitable. Well, you'll go with a cargo plane because here's a country that wants its vaccines, a country that wants its TVs or whatever it is that they want. You'll go to places like, well, I'm not going to name any place that would be non-hospitable, but places where that then present plenty of operational challenges that maybe are not the best organized, that will force you to the limit of the operation and put a lot of the threat assessment on you as the pilot. So that's very interesting. And you'll go everywhere in the world, over the North Pole, over the Himalayas, anywhere. From an operational standpoint, it's really, really interesting, I find. And then the last thing is the performance. A lot of the time you will fly a leg out empty and the leg back full, or the opposite. Maybe not in the type of operations Hilary was describing, but at Emirates, that's what we did very often. You fly out empty to go and collect the precious cargo that will pay for both trips. What does this mean? On the 777, that's 351 tons max takeoff weight. You will take off at 351 tons out, and you will take off at maybe 210 tons back. That's a big difference, okay? So this comes with its own set of threats. When you compute the V-speeds, when the way the airplane handles, the fact that, for instance, you might have, when the plane is light, too much power that if you don't brief adequately, if you do a takeoff, and for instance, there is there's something that happened to me. There was wind shear reported, so you don't take off in wind shear. You wait to have indications that wind shear is gone. But if there is still a risk, the SOP is that you should apply toga. Well, do this on an empty cargo plane and you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a real problem to control the plane. So the idea here is to say, okay, the SOP says you go toga when you have wind shear suspected, although nobody reported it on landing, so it's okay to go now. The problem is, if you know your machine well enough, you know it's a bad idea. And that if you just go with a normal takeoff setting, you have actually as much protection as if you were toga on the full, as if you were toga on the, welcome to my home, as if we, don't know what happened with my camera, as if you were toga on the on the full plane. Okay, so these are considerations that this would never happen on a passenger flight. And so it makes the flying very, very interesting. Okay, I hope that this was useful from my operational perspective. But Hilary, do you have some more? Because you actually have worked with cargo much more than me.
I actually think you hit all the points I had written down. I had
Ah,
about the hazmat. Yeah, there's
yeah.
its own set of different things. And yes, I know what you're talking about the different loads. In fact, had seen pilots have a couple issues with that, with having flying the empty plane back here or there, and they weren't used to it because they had always flown it full. But I think it's exciting. A lot of times you're supervising your load and you get to see a lot of neat things as well. So you don't have passengers to interact with, but I think that there's still as much fun because we do this career for fun, right? We want to enjoy it. And there's a lot to it. Like you said, you go to some neat places and sometimes there's more variety than on the passenger flying, depending on the type of cargo you're flying or the schedules. You might be able to get a little bit more variety and excitement.
So would you
Yeah.
say that all in all, cargo pilots are happier, the ones you know?
The ones I know are yes. I've met quite a few and they seem like a pretty happy bunch. I know on the feeder level, it's mostly they love their schedules, right? They have some very short days sometimes. I'd say a drawback is sometimes at that level they don't get a lot of hours.
Ah,
They're sometimes very short, like 1 hour out, 1 hour back. So you're not sometimes going to get the flight time like you would with passenger flying at a 121 cargo versus a 121 regional with passengers. Yeah, you're getting maybe 40 hours a month if you're lucky with cargo. So I
and
said it's an easy job
and
because
so are they? Yeah, because one of the things certainly when I worked for Emirates is the fatigue, the constant fatigue. And when you're fatigued, you tend to be always fatigued because you never recover. That's the problem. So if you find a job that gets you to fly very little and you get paid well, it's something to consider long term. But do you
well,
think that your cargo pilots, the ones that you knew well, they were envisaging that they were gonna go to passenger afterwards? Were there still this dream behind the mountain somewhere that they were in the distance that they would?
they No, they were really tracking to go to the legacy cargo carriers,
Yeah.
like FedEx or so. Yeah, and there were some people that they started out, they knew they wanted cargo, so they flew small planes and moved up. But
Okay.
there's still, I think the stigma is going away. Years ago, it was all your cargo pilots. You kind of not, I guess, the level of professionalism, but I've never seen that. All the cargo pilots I know have the same level of professionalism and standards. Yeah, typically they'll go on to the legacy cargo carriers, the similar schedules, right? They kind of are already familiar and they already have that training, the hazmat training, all the things that go with
Oh yeah.
cargo. And from what the cargo pilots tell me, there's a lot more paperwork when you fly cargo. So, got to be good at your paperwork.
But why is there more
So,
paperwork? More paperwork, you mean
the
to
company paperwork, yeah, just through the company, just a lot of paperwork.
when you join or
Com No, just on the day to
on the
day.
day to
At
day?
least, yeah, just the paperwork that they have to fill out and complete. Now, on the turboprop planes, though, a lot of them are hand loaded. The larger aircraft are containerized, right? And it's a lot easier, but the smaller ones, there was a lot of hand loading, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
making sure they're strapping down the nets. And those are real. I think a big thing is you can't have complacency there,
No.
thinking that they're going to strap everything down. You really have to supervise those loads. It's for your safety, especially if you're flying the smaller turboprop aircraft that are hand loaded. I think there's a lot more room for error there with the loading and making sure it's secure. And they're completely dependent on the nets versus some of the larger aircraft have the pallets that
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
lock in, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have as much room for error there. So I think it's exciting and challenging.
Yeah, it's exciting and challenging. Exactly. I think I personally, as I grew a bit older, I enjoyed the quiet. There was more quiet. I enjoyed the
Yeah,
that it was more peaceful in a way at a time where
yeah.
in my life where I needed to be able to rest more. It gave me that more quiet operation that I really enjoyed. Now, when it's quiet, also it means that you are well. There's no cabin crew, which means you sort of make your own coffee. There's no espresso machine. You have just the coffee that's not the best. And you, if one of you would be sick, well, there's no one to look after you here. There's no doctor on board, no cabin crew, no nothing. So that's another factor. It's just the two of you, really. So that's it. So when you are going for a cargo airline interview, it's important that you maybe summarize some of what we just discussed in this video and understand that you're aware of the differences. Okay, and now you tailor it. If you're going for an American feeder airline, you'll talk about the schedules. Now, if you're going for an airline like Cargolux, you're going to talk about discovering the world. Okay, it's going to be a different, it's going to be a different speech you're going to adjust. But the bulk of what we discussed on how different and exciting the operation is, that's something you have to bring and that a lot of other candidates who don't know won't bring. So you will shine. Simple, right?
That's right.
Hilary,
Because you always want to tell them how much you love it and you want to work at that airline. So now you have some
exactly.
details.
Exactly. And just today we were talking about cover letters and we have a similar view. A lot of candidates make this mistake to talk about themselves too much in the cover letter. You want to talk about why you love this airline. So we agreed on that one
That
as
would
well.
be my first question. Why cargo?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
if you're thinking
Yeah.
about cargo, you better have an answer for that one. Why? Why did you choose cargo?
And for an answer like this, you don't want to give them fluff. You want to give them evidence that you know what you're talking about. So take the contents of this video as a guide. Hilary, thank you so much for spending the time with us. It's been a pleasure to get to know you, and I hope our audience gives us a lot of likes for this. Thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
So there you have it. You now understand the real differences between passenger and cargo, the stability, the lifestyle, and the operational reality of managing cargo instead of managing people. And maybe you have a clearer idea of which one actually fits you. You also saw that the picture is not the same everywhere. The US and Europe run different models, different schedules, different career paths. At the end of the day, of course, we're all pilots, but the regulations and the market structure are not identical. This is the kind of content our clients get in every live session, included for everyone enrolled on an advanced interview course. We repeat interviews together, and sometimes, if there's a need for a topic development, we do it live right there for our clients. If you want more of this, and if you want to prepare with people who have actually sat on the recruiter side of the table, come and join us. Scan the QR code on the screen now. You will get me, of course, and our instructors like Hilary.